All right, let's get started with our first case at 1232 Bridge Street Northwest. Elizabeth, I don't think your mic is working. Try now.
Check, check. Is
It
it on?
is my button. Yeah, apparently I turned.
Oh, you were
Someone turned
muting
it
me.
off. I'll blame the mayor.
Okay. This is a continuation of a public hearing that was originally opened on May 26th for 1232 Bridge Northwest. The applicant is requesting approval for a restaurant with an outdoor patio with alcohol service, along with parking reductions. The hours of operation of the patio, of the outdoor patio, as well as their proximity to residential, require special land use approval for that use. The amount of the parking waiver also necessitates Planning Commission approval. So when the applicant was before you on May 26th, we did talk about the new restaurant with, I think, 125 patrons indoors and 100 seats outdoors. The Planning Commission at that time asked for additional community engagement, submission of the traffic generation report that was requested by Mobile GR, and further exploration of parking solutions. So at this time, I'll really just focus on that since we already talked about most everything else. So regarding parking, Resurrection Fellowship Church, which is located down the block, you can see here on this slide, it's on the west side of Valley. They have a parking lot that's vacant most of the time. And the church has submitted letters indicating that they and the applicant have agreed to terms of an agreement for unlimited use of 60 spaces in the parking lot, except for Sundays during services and during special church events. So I don't have a copy of this agreement, but it sounds like they've come to terms, and the applicant will be able to speak in additional detail on that. I do want to mention that parking waivers, or no, let me back up, that required parking can be met on a separate lot within 300 feet of the subject site. This does meet that criteria. The Planning Commission might want to consider, however, the implications of encumbering this property in perpetuity due to the fact that, you know, we don't know what might happen to the church. What if the church changes hands and then they need those parking spaces? So, you know, that's just something to keep in mind. Additionally, we don't know what is going to happen in this area, meaning Bridge, Valley, Garfield, in the future. There are some discussions about changing the street configuration in this area, specifically Valley north of Bridge. And so that could have some impacts on the parking in the neighborhood. And then I'd like to add that I know that there have been discussions about some other redevelopment in that neighborhood. So what I'm trying to say is that if an option for a parking waiver is granting the parking waiver, if you find that appropriate, but also requiring, this parking agreement maybe for a limited number of years, maybe 5 years. That's just something to think about, and maybe that's something you'd like to discuss. Relative to the trip generation analysis, the applicant had that prepared, and it was reviewed by our traffic engineers, and the engineer agrees with the findings of the analysis that the land use will generate more trips than the existing or previous thrift store use, but not by a significant enough amount to require a further traffic safety analysis or changes to the surrounding roadways. So I just want to mention that. Also, regarding neighborhood engagement, the applicant provided a summary of their engagement activities. We also have received several new letters. JBAN did submit a letter expressing concerns about the proposal, including the lack of sufficient parking, traffic safety issues in the area, specifically the hill west of the overpass there, as well as the intensity of the proposed use. They do ask that if you are amenable to the outdoor seating request, that you prohibit outdoor sound or music amplification, and there was no specific request in the application for outdoor entertainment, but you could prohibit outdoor music as well. They also asked about requiring substantial sound buffering methods, and I did include that as a condition of approval if you're amenable to that. And they also asked about limiting the hours of operation to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, rather than the requested hours of operation. They also suggested that a reduction in the seating capacity outdoors may further or help mitigate sound in the patio. One last thing I'd like to add, I also received several letters from the folks that live next door, and that they just came in this morning, and they had similar concerns, specifically about noise and parking. They did mention in their letters that they oppose the restaurant. I would like to point out that it's really the outdoor seating that's under consideration today. The applicant still could operate a restaurant with alcohol that stays open until midnight without planning commission approval. I think we would need to grant them some parking waiver, but it could still be done. So in sum, we're looking at a restaurant with outdoor seating until midnight, I believe it's requested. And so the Planning Commission should talk about the appropriateness of the proposed hours of operation, adequacy of buffering and sound mitigation. We should also discuss the appropriate height of the fence. The applicant requested 7 feet. There is a grade change, and typically we would find 6 feet to be most appropriate. That might be something the Planning Commission wishes to discuss, as well as the adequacy of the parking arrangements. Did you have any questions for me, or shall I turn it over to the applicant?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions?
I have just one. I've driven by there. Is that a four-way stop there, or are there stop signs?
No,
On the
there's
streets.
there's no stop signs on Bridge Street.
And how about on Valley?
I mean,
Going on-
Well, yes, you have to stop on Valley.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I
Bridge-
just wanted to confirm it because I couldn't see it in the picture.
Yeah, Bridge is the through street, and you have to stop at Valley,
Okay, thank you.
north and southbound.
Yeah, just one. So, and maybe this is, yeah, but there was an exhibit in our packet with comparing other outdoor seating surrounded by housing or residential. And I'm just wondering if there's any sense of a capacity comparison of these. Like, it seems like many of these that are in here likely don't have 100 seats outside. So I just didn't know.
Right. I did not do an analysis of this. I thought that, I guess I would agree with your assertion there.
Okay.
Probably most of these places, the Holiday, I think, has a pretty big outdoor seating area, but I don't know about the other ones. I think the greater issue is not just proximity to residential, but the nature of those commercial zone districts. I think here, this has been a rather moribund business district, and so this would be a real significant change. So I think that's part of something that needs to be considered.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Have the applicant up if there's other information you want to share with us.
Afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Elliott Moeller. I'm with Ben Moeller Realty. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us again today regarding our application. There isn't much I need to add. I think Ms. Zeller did a fine job detailing what we're requesting here. No development is bound to please everybody, especially in a densely populated area. But I can stand before you all today to tell you that our plans have been well received amongst the neighborhood, the majority of the neighborhood. Our outreach, which exceeds what is in your packet today. We've just received an outpouring of support and excitement to welcome Sovngarde into their neighborhood. Concerns were raised. We think our solutions meet or exceed what was asked. Sovngarde's mission is to be a part of the fabric of the neighborhood, and they want a place that the neighbors can be proud of and enjoy being customers of. That's all I have. Thanks.
Elliott, I have a couple questions. Still no, I guess, written application for live music or any entertainment or amplified music outside. Can you confirm that that's not part of the plan?
That's not part of the plan.
I think maybe, Rick, you had mentioned before the possibility of having some acoustic music or something outside. Is that still something you would hope to do, or?
Yeah, I guess I probably need official clarification on amplified versus non-amplified music, and we're open to making it work. It's if that needs to be an official filing, and if that's something that we're hearing from the neighbors, is a potential problem, we're willing to work with whatever the best solution is for that. But at this time, we're not applying for any entertainment license or.
In your existing location, how often would you say you have something outside?
I would say it's maybe once a month, if that.
Okay.
Very, very seldom.
Tyler or Elizabeth, can you remind me, is there, there's an application that a business can make up to how many times a year that they could host? 4 times per year? Okay. So I know that that's been used by others, and I think it's through special events?
It's a temporary use permit.
Okay. So that might be an option if you wanted to do something that way. Each individual event could be addressed separately. I think without having it specifically requested here, I don't know that we would be comfortable granting kind of a blanket. And maybe that's something in the future, if you wanted to do it more than 4 times a year, you could come back and ask for.
Sure, that's understood and is no problem for us, and we understand we didn't apply for it, so thank you.
So based on some of the feedback you've received, you requested the 7-foot fence. Is there any additional buffering that you've thought of or planned for to help alleviate some of those concerns?
Yeah, I think we've come up with a schematic here. I don't know that it's gotten into the digital filing or the best way to disseminate this. But yeah, Jim could speak on what this is real quick, and I don't know if it's allowable to pass this around or to get it in the filing.
Yeah, you can hand it to Commissioner at the end here.
Good afternoon, I'm Jim Morgan, the landscape architect on the team. I do have a graphic here, and I'll pass this out. What it's showing is the existing buffer at the former location, and our plan is to do something the same. So take a look. So I'll go ahead and start talking while that's being passed out, but you'll see it here in a second. So there's a photograph in the upper right-hand corner, and that's an actual photograph of the living wall that is adjacent to the residential to the north. It's a kind of goes beyond what's required by code, but it does 2 things. It makes the outdoor dining space very pleasant. And it also absorbs any sound if there's talking or laughing or any talking by the patrons enjoying their dinner. It does absorb a lot more sound than just your normal required landscaping. We're also suggesting a 6-foot solid wood fence that would be all along the perimeter. And you can see on the plan there where that living wall would go. It's kind of that red or pink area on the south side, and then it wraps around the east side a little bit. So that is our proposal. The rest of the perimeter there is a 5-foot landscape strip with a solid 6-foot wood fence. And all of the plantings would comply with code.
Any other questions?
Yeah, also related to some of the feedback, related to the hours for outdoor seating. Are you comfortable with some additional limitations on that? Your thoughts on that? Or open to it? I mean, not that it's being decided right now.
Yeah, we certainly understand why that has been suggested by J-Ban. And, my line is we're always open to hearing, the feedback from the neighbors. So I think this is a point that we're potentially willing to, to flex on. I guess my only rebuttal to that is hours of operation are, when you make your money. And most of the time, I would say our current demographic of our guests, they're not staying super late, and we're kind of the ones that are, I guess not predisposed to overserve our clientele, as to put it delicately, compared to some of our other neighbors. So, we want to be respectful, and we understand that there's children living in the area, and there's people that want to go to bed and go to work. So, we understand that, and are are open to discussing that or to the commission's interpretation of that.
Great, thanks.
Can you speak, sorry to keep getting up and have just, in the absence of the formal agreement between you and the church, can you speak to some of the terms in terms of the length of the agreement? Is it an annual agreement that's updated annually, or just as Elizabeth mentioned, the parking needs are going to continue with the use regardless of whether you guys own the place or not, right? So can you speak a little bit more to it since we don't have the actual agreement?
I cannot. I'm not at liberty to disclose the terms and conditions of the parking contract between the church and the restaurant applicant, but it's ongoing.
So you don't actually have a formal agreement?
You have the letter in front of you that says we have a formal contract.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case at 1232 Bridge Street Northwest, I invite you to come forward, state your name for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Hi everyone, I'm Zach Cook. I live in the 1100 block of Bridge, about 6 houses down from this restaurant. I just wanted to say I don't oppose your guys' restaurant. I just love to just find a parking solution. That's my number one concern still. The church agreement, like I said, we'd love if that's ongoing and there's like, some way to solidify that if it does change hands, if something turns over, it's not just going to fade away and we're going to have 50, 60 more cars on a street that is being redeveloped. The lot across the street has been purchased, it could be redeveloped to something else. Always things changing, and that increases parking, increases traffic. These are, really the big concerns. The noise, I know that was one of the concerns I had last time. You guys addressed that. I think the noise wall is great. I think that the living wall, the wood wall, the shrubs, everything's going to knock it down. I don't think over the cars and motorcycles that already go through there all the time, that's fine. If the traffic engineer said the traffic safety's fine right there, awesome. That was one of the concerns I had as well. I said really just the parking, especially knowing that they're going to tear up the street of Garfield in the next year. That's already 50 to 75% occupied from the study from last time. And that's during daytime hours, which your operating hours are outside of that. And that's going to be a more densely trafficked area. So knowing that's going to be gone, how do you alleviate the 100 extra cars, 200 extra cars, however many are along the street there at any given time? So that was really just the big concern, was just we'd love to find an actual solution for a lot of us that have no driveways, alleys, whatever. We rely on street parking for our day-to-day lives, and people have kids, dogs, but are always walking. It's a busy park, just like I said, it's concerned about safety and being able to get to your car and feel safe having it in front of your house and not have to walk blocks and blocks and blocks to get to your car. So I said that was really our concern. So thanks for hearing me out, and thanks for addressing the rest of the concerns that we had as well.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Tammy. I live, about 4 or 5 houses away, and I really oppose this. And if these guys can say that they wouldn't mind somebody come along and in between that white and this gray here and that amount of space, they want to cram 100 people next to somebody's backyard, that they would appreciate that, or any of you would appreciate that, or even that I live 4 houses down, that I would appreciate that. Now, I was all about this, and I was really happy. I was thrilled. I was ecstatic, because I always wanted to see that corner, brightened up, vibrant, and I thought it would really connect with what's going on the opposite end of Bridge Street. I mean, I really was. And if I was you guys, I'd get a hold of 12, 15, they just burnt, and it's due for demolition.
Ma'am, could you please address the commission?
And it might actually solve all the problems, because if you could get that property, if he's just going to tear it down and leave it vacant, that'd solve all your problems. There's all your parking, there's where you could build, there's where you said you were going to put it originally, It's open space over the highway. You don't bother anybody. You don't bother the neighbors. But personally, what, he did was he made someone of 30 years homeless, and that person ended up dying, Then he comes in and he tells the neighbors that that building's historical. He was going to make a parking lot, but he can't tear it down. Just all these lies that, that's just been vacant all these years and nobody's made, and that's lies. It's had an electronic shop, firefighters, the thrift store. So you can't believe everything he's promising, and then what if it doesn't work out like he thinks? And then we got this bar sitting there, right, that somebody else comes along and buys, and it ends up being a terror, just a real terror. And so there's a business on the opposite corner of that where he is proposing this, and they have gatherings out behind their building, and I can hear them all the time, So, yeah, we have had a really rough time with the college houses, and these are the people he's saying is approving probably because they're transient. They ain't got to live there all the time. They just got to go there to have fun. Fun. We live there, so we have to put up with it all the time. So I'm just saying, I can hear them when they have their gatherings. I'm sure I'm going to hear that. I'm going to hear happy birthdays, his acoustic guitar music that I hear when I come down Broadway. I'm just saying, I just don't think that spot and that tight of a spot and that hill, that hill comes right down. That's why there's a lot of accidents there. People can't stop in the winter, come down and hit cars coming off Valley. It happens all the time. And now you want to increase that. Where if he went across the street, worked to deal with that guy whose building just burnt, he'd have that whole area plus the one-way street. There wouldn't be no worry about parking, no worry about the church and what would happen to the church. And, when COVID came along, it quieted down the neighborhood. We don't have 15, 20 kids in a house, and we have a lot of them, right? It has quieted down the basketball court. We have found some peace and tranquility. And I wish that, he would stick to his original plan, and I think it would be a beautiful plan. And I think it would keep a lot of these what ifs out of the equation.
All right, thank you.
Peter Carlberg, John Ball area neighbors. You got our letter on this and raising the issues. I just want to reiterate some things. This is a very large capacity outdoor seating area, and that's really concerning because the amount of hubbub that can be generated. Among the reasons we especially are concerned about anything amplifying is because that makes the people there talk even louder so they can hear themselves over any background noise. We have, down where I live, we have putt-putts on Fulton Street, and they have their little Muzak background music playing out on their thing, which is out on the business street, and those people get louder than heck because they're trying to hear each other over the top of, some background music, even though it doesn't seem like much between the background music, the street, and everything else. The people are talking really loud, and in the evenings, this is really annoying. So the sound issues with this thing are serious, and the landscape buffer, what's that, wood chips? And I'm sorry, a living wall put on the fence is not a buffer. A line of tall firs along the fence might be sound buffering, but a living wall is not sound buffering, and it also the traffic safety thing is cars coming down Bridge Street hill there. The hill takes a big jog and comes back right as it's going under the freeway overpass. There's all sorts of view blocks, and if drivers are not riding their brake from the top of the hill, they get going really fast. They don't even know how fast they're going, and they come out from that curve and the view block from the underpass, and all of a sudden they're right there in front of this place. That's the nature of why people who drive that street regularly find this to be dangerous. We don't, at our meeting, people didn't want to kill this proposal, and we didn't want to put a, poison pill in conditions that would prevent it from happening. But the three issues we raised all need serious attention. Now, I can perfectly well understand why the church would want to be in a position where they could cancel this thing at any time if they felt things were not going well. And if that's the case, then there's really no guarantee that this parking is there, unless there's some definite duration during which one party cannot just cancel at will. Then it's really no parking agreement at all. It's just kind of a handshake. So, but as far as the use goes, we'd love to have a restaurant in this neighborhood. As we've said, we all love the plan for across the street.
All right,
this
thanks.
one raises more problems.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else for this? All right, then I'll close the public hearing, have the applicant up if there's things you want to address that were raised.
Thank you. So just to address a couple of the concerns, thank you all for showing up and letting us hear what you have to say. I think that, there's no guarantees, in life, and I think that we can't guarantee that somebody's not going to drive into the side of our building. We can't guarantee that we're going to thrive there. But I think we've shown that we've done all of the due diligence that we possibly can on the issues that have been raised for this project. And I think something I addressed during the last meeting was that I think there is an unknown mentality of what we are as a business, and I think that allowing this, could be, it is something that I think I understand the neighbors on, that once it's allowed, it could be, several different things. But I think that we've proven that even in our current space, we've had to address noise issues. The living wall is an effective sound barrier. There's science out there about that. That's the reason why we put it in the first place. And that's 65% of our sales are food versus alcohol. So although we're proposing an outdoor beer garden, and I know that the name beer garden probably has certain connotations for people, we're a place that people generally come to, for dinner. So, yeah, I hope that, we've done our best to address the concerns. In particular with the church, we were just saying that the church has been there for 20 years, and obviously not having a contract in front of you visible seems like it's an issue for everybody, but we we can't force them to produce something that they're not comfortable producing. And I think that they've given us really a lot of grace to have this opportunity, and I think it's really solved a lot of the issues that the neighborhood has brought up. There's more than ample parking that's in that space. It's seldom used. We're also participating with them for snow plowing, salting, maintaining the lots. Another thing that wasn't mentioned is they're going to allow us to install proper signage that indicates that it's parking for the restaurant as well as our employees. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
So I don't think that when Commissioner Beeler was asking about the contract, that she's asking about like the monetary value or like those kinds of things, but more along the lines of the number of spaces and the hours and the time. Can you share some of those things with us? Sorry to put words in your mouth.
We can share that. It's as long as they're open for business, it aligns with Sovngarde's hours, and the other things I think were outlined in that letter.
So it's 60 spaces.
Yeah, it was 60 some spaces. which I think exceeds what is being asked for the waiver.
You said as long as they're in business. Who is they?
No, they're business hours, so
Okay.
they're not open, I believe, Monday and Tuesday? Monday and Tuesday, they're not open. So it'd be 5 days a week when they're open.
But not on Sunday, because the church will be in operation then.
Just during their service hours, which I believe Sylvan Guard opens at 10 a.m., correct me if I'm wrong, on Sunday? 10 a.m., and that's right when their service is, so it'd be just an hour or so overlap.
And you're still not able to share with us the term? And when I say term, I mean the length of time the agreement is in place. So is it an annual agreement that gets renewed annually? And again, that matters, right? Because it could go away and say, if it's a 6-month agreement, 6 months, you have no parking.
Yeah, I can say it's an ongoing term. Other opportunities we've been working with the city on, which adds quite a few new parking spaces to the immediate neighborhood, and public safety concerns that were raised. We're also working with city departments to address those and assist however we can assist in those matters. We're happy to help. We want to be good neighbors. There's additional parking that we're talking to the city about north of Bridge Street on Valley. I believe you have that graphic. We've hired an engineer to draw up what that looks like, and the city is evaluating that, which would add permanent parking to the immediate neighborhood by quite a bit. I think 28 spaces additionally, 28 spaces.
Is that a public lot that you're referring to?
It's a city street. It's currently 3 lanes. We're in communication with the city to vacate a lane and a half. Jim, you want to speak to that?
So we put together a concept drawing. I think Tyler may have seen it and had a chance to review it. Valley is a 66-foot wide right-of-way. It's a one-way street. It's currently 36 feet wide, and within that 66 feet, there is room for angle parking on both sides with a 14-foot aisle, which exceeds the standard, and sidewalks on both sides. So that's something that would be a public parking opportunity without adding to any right-of-way. I don't think MDOT even gets involved because that is a city street. It could be improved. It's certainly there potentially, but we do have 60 spaces agreed upon with the church, which exceeds the 57 required by the restaurant.
I have received some information on improvements to Valley Avenue. I've shared that information with Mobile GR. They're taking a look at it. It's my understanding too that Valley Avenue is actually owned by MDOT and maintained by the city. So there's some things that we'd have to address there. Improvements are, as mentioned, are going to be made to Garfield, repainting that, and it's one-way currently, and looking at, as a test pilot, making that 2-way to see how that area functions. And then based off that, there might be some discussions about Valley Avenue and those improvements to that street. But at this time, there's no commitment from the city to make any improvements to there. We will consider it in the future. But circling back to the church parking, Elliott, you'd mentioned that there's no time period at this point guaranteed within that contract. I just see some faces that are puzzled with regard to that and the outdoor dining and trying to tie those two together with the commissioners. And we would want a copy of that as part of the conditions should the commission approve it, to release the LUDS permit, right? Because the two uses are connected together. So can you provide us any more information on that, on the term of that agreement?
I'm happy to chat with the restaurant and the church and make that a condition of LUD's, where we outline some of the terms and conditions that you're seeking.
Other questions, commissioners or staff? I'm sorry, the public hearing's been closed, so I can't have any more comments from the public at this time. Okay? All right. Commissioners, discussion on the case before us.
I love the concept of this restaurant. I've frequented the one closer to downtown. That said, the other sites seem to work so well for outdoor gathering because you had the buffer of the highway and you weren't right up against residential. So there are a couple of flags, the lack of any solid agreement or guarantees of parking at the church. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I have some concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would want to make sure that the city has a copy of the agreement based on the terms that we're talking about here, to make sure that if we approve this, that the parking is guaranteed for a certain term here, so that it doesn't go away as soon as this were to pass. Yeah, I guess I'd be interested to hear how folks feel about the capacity of the outdoor. I think that the soundproofing that they've shown us, I think I appreciate the work that went into providing this for us. It sounds like the fence height they're asking for now is 6 feet rather than 7 feet, which is fine. I'd also be interested to hearing how other commissioners feel about going to 10 p.m. on weeknights for the outdoors.
Yeah, I appreciate the efforts and the conversations that have happened between the church and the applicant, but in the absence of proof of the agreement, which if you look back to the reason we tabled it, a part of that was in order to meet the parking standard, we were going to need proof of a parking agreement. We don't have a copy of a parking agreement. We don't know what the terms of the parking agreement are, but for the number of spaces and the time. But as the staff has been talking about, the use will continue with this space regardless of this particular applicant's involvement. And so I can't be supportive of it despite how much I want to, because I think parking seems to be the single biggest concern from the neighbors, from the neighborhood association, and in the absence of really understanding the details of the agreement, I can't be supportive of it.
Is there an acceptable term?
If there was a term that could be acceptable, right? But I'm not trying to lawyer the applicant here, but in the absence of any kind of specificity, my guess is there isn't any.
Right.
And so that's, again, my concern with the absence of the actual agreement. And as staff has mentioned, that in order to get the LUDs, they're probably going to have to turn over the actual agreement. But before we get to make a decision about it, I can't do that without understanding it.
Right. I guess my question is, if we're otherwise inclined to support this, is there an acceptable term that could be shown on a parking agreement, turned in as a condition of approval to city staff? Is it indefinite? Which it could be.
I mean, that's what I would expect.
As long as the restaurant's in operation, and if the restaurant ceases to exist, then the permission for outdoor seating evaporates. I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, it is impossible, I think, for us as a planning commission to hold parties responsible for the future, but, because the church could change hands as well. And the church can't obligate its next landowner to agreements that it has. Theoretically, it could. I mean, but I just, again, not understanding if there's a term to the agreement, but there's no specific number I'm looking for, just the existence of a number.
So you wouldn't be willing to approve if it were a 10-year term? If
No,
we were to say with a 10-year term, because even John Ball area neighbors doesn't want to kill the project. They just want some assurance. And so I don't want to see this die if there's a way forward.
No, I don't want to see it die either.
Put the onus back on them.
I want to be supportive of ongoing business development and economic growth within our community, absolutely. But as we look at the single biggest concern from those participating in today's hearing and the previous hearing, it's parking. And while there's all kinds of aspiration around additional parking, including the slide that's on the screen now, what staff talked about in terms of ongoing conversation on other streets in the vicinity, there's nothing right now. And so I don't want to kill it either, but I'm not in a position today, based on the aspiration of parking and the vagueness of the parking agreement, to support it today.
Is there a willingness to table until in 2 weeks and come back with a more defined agreement?
I mean, I'm just one voice on this, right? But we've done that once before. And today's hearing hasn't resulted for me in the specificity necessary to believe that this applicant meets the standards that we are obligated to follow. All the other aspirational parking is certainly not going to get done anytime soon, regardless of who owns Valley and who's responsible for its maintenance. I know there's some disagreement about that, but yeah, I mean, you could table it until you have a formal agreement that you would put in front of the Planning Commission, which you would need to do to get LUD's permit anyway, but.
Amber, did you? Okay. Chris?
Just a suggestion. I do agree that you need more details as far as, it sounds like you've testified to 60 spaces and somewhat alluded to the hours that the spaces would be needed. As far as for the Plan Commission, just a light suggestion would be that as a condition of approval to allow the outdoor seating, that the parking agreement for 60 spaces must exist. In other words, if the parking agreement goes away, so does outdoor seating. That way you don't have to put a specific term on it and you don't have to worry about whether or not the property is sold or the agreement terminates.
However, to Stacy's point, if the term of the agreement is a year, not ongoing, it sort of would defeat the purpose of using this as a resolution or a permission for the outdoor seating, is to have that ongoing parking. So it can't be just an agreement. Wouldn't it have to be an agreement that is ongoing as long as the business is in operation?
Is the parking necessitated by the outdoor seating or the business in its entirety? If it's just the outdoor seating, that's what we're listening to today, that's why they're here, is my understanding, then as a condition to approval, they would need the 60 spaces in place.
Based on the staff report, it looks like 32 of the parking spaces would be attributed to the indoor occupancy and 25 for outdoor. So, yeah, that is a little tricky.
Stacy, is what Amber is proposing amenable to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, but to Laurel's point, the restaurant itself still even without outdoor seating, still needs 32 parking spaces. And I could ask staff to articulate how waivers would be appropriate, given the 32 parking spaces necessary regardless of outdoor seating. But I appreciate Amber's creativity. I'm sure the applicant does too, that, there's a connection theoretically between a parking agreement to add at least 25 spaces through that for the outdoor seating.
I think there's a difference between 30 spaces and 25 spaces or whatever that might be. Because I do think that similar to our previous approval on the adjacent corner, Valley can absorb some of this demand. Whether it works that way or not, I don't know, but I think that, parking does exist in the area. Whether it's enough, I think is the problem. And so tying half of the parking up, the needed parking up with this approval, I think does some to alleviate concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Kristen in the last hearing articulated some information that I didn't think was in staff report, though, around the current on-street parking use in this vicinity, and it was pretty high. If I recall correctly, it was, 70% plus, I think. So, yeah, there's some capacity,
Right.
but not enough.
Amber, if the parking agreement ended, would there be an opportunity for them to provide a new agreement or a new solution? How would that work?
They would most likely have to file a new application.
Okay. Because let's say all of these other parking solutions happen in the meantime, and then there is adequate parking in the immediate vicinity, then I think we would all probably be open to, we'd want to see this continue. So I don't know. I want to see it work.
Would it be more efficient just to table this? I know we've done this before, and ask them to bring us back?
Can one of the applicants, let us know if that would do anything at all?
Because of the timing of the restaurant, it's now closed. For the restaurant to continue, we need to continue. So tabling is not good. I'm afraid it's going to go away if it's tabled. We are comfortable with Amber's solution. And we think over time the parking in this area can be improved. We've got a wonderful opportunity on Valley. It's going to take time. MDOT is involved. I wasn't aware of that. And anytime the highway's involved, it takes more time. But we do have an agreement with the church. We don't think it's going to go away. We can work on something that's a little more substantial, a little more detail. But we're comfortable with Amber's solution. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm okay with that. You understand that you'll need to provide the agreement to city staff then as part of this. I'm sorry, the public hearing is closed, so I can't have you address the commission any longer. I'm sorry. You can address city staff on the side if you want, and they can raise it with us, but I can't have you bring it up to us any longer, okay? I'm sorry. Please go. I understand that, but we have order here, okay? I understand. Please, Elizabeth, can you discuss this with her?
Alley, if you take that one-way street down that public alley, you could give him.
I think that if there's an
Please stop
opportunity-
addressing the commission.
I think if there's an opportunity with Amber's assistance here to link the parking agreement to the outdoor use, then I would be comfortable with that, especially if the applicant is willing and would be required prior to LUD's permitting to submit the formal agreement.
Right, so you could tie it to the actual agreement, or if you wanted to streamline this, you could tie it to the obviously see the current agreement so you know that that's in place for now. but to actually connect it to the 60 spaces within a certain distance from the seating area. That way, if something happens in the future, they renovate the area and more parking becomes available or whatever happens, it's not only tied to the agreement, it's just tied to the number of spaces they need.
That would eliminate the need to come back if the church's agreement falls through, but there are other solutions in the meantime, right?
Right, they may be able to discuss things with staff and as opposed to coming back in.
I'm much more comfortable with that situation. Can support that.
Yep.
Okay. In terms of outdoor seating, noise, hours of operation, it seems like they're amenable to what the neighbors had suggested about the earlier hours, particularly during the week. I think that seems like a fair compromise considering the how close some of those residents are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as Elizabeth pointed out, there's very little other commercial in this area. So contrary to some of the examples or comparisons the applicant put forth, I think in order for this to be harmonious with this particular community and its proximity to the LDR, I like and I can't remember where we landed, but was it at 10 p.m. And then Friday and Saturday no later than 11?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and I'm very comfortable with that. I think that the buffer is appropriate. In terms of the traffic, it's really out of their control what's happening coming down Bridge Street. My hope is that more activity at this little district here will encourage folks to slow down even more. We see it in other business districts where there's more activity. Cars just slow down more. They're being more cautious. So hopefully we can see that and some additional improvements from the city over time would be nice.
Yeah, there's a plan next year for a rapid rectangular flashing beacon at Garfield, at Bridge Street. So that'll be
Okay.
next year.
Good. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, would somebody be willing to make a motion?
Laurel can do it.
After she said she...
I feel like she was writing a lot of what we talked about now, but
Well, we'll see how much I cough through this, but sure, I'll do it. All right. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the site plan review and special land use request of the High Group LLC Elliott Moeller for a restaurant and outdoor patio, both with alcohol service, along with a parking reduction at 1232 Bridge Street Northwest for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the TNTBA zone district to include active uses such as retail and restaurants on the ground floor, and the proposed outdoor seating will contribute to the vitality of the business district. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.e because the proposed outdoor seating has been designed to meet all standards and requirements with the modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance, and the site will be brought into conformance with all site improvement provisions relative to and proportionate to the extent of redevelopment. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed use will support the desired mix of small-scale retail, service, entertainment, civic, office, and residential uses to enhance the vitality of the area. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because appropriate buffering and screening is proposed from abutting residential uses. The hours of outdoor seating activity will be reduced and adequate parking agreements will be provided to make sure parking is adequate in the area or addressed appropriately. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to the existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, or odors because the scale and hours of the operation will limit the intensity and impact of the use on other uses in the vicinity. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because the redevelopment of the site with the building located at the street will create vibrancy in the district. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, the proposed location for alcohol sales will be an asset to the neighborhood because there are no such establishments currently in the subject business district. The use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the proposed use as a restaurant that operates no later than 11 p.m. is not anticipated to create excessive noise or activity. The use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the primary use is as a restaurant serving food for consumption on the premises during all hours of operation. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions at A, approvals, which I will read. 1, that the application and plans submitted by the applicant and signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and are as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per applicant testimony as recorded in the planning commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs should be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services or LUDs permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the city of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. 5, that any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the planning commission. 6, that the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. 7, that this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of planning commission's decision. B, that the restaurant may operate the restaurant may operate until midnight with seating on the outdoor patio operating Sunday through Thursday no later than 10 p.m. and Friday and Saturday no later than 11 p.m. C, that this approval does not include any outdoor entertainment. D, that additional soundproofing elements as submitted by the applicant today shall be incorporated to mitigate the impact of the outdoor seating on nearby residential properties, with details to be provided with the LUDs permit. That the fence surrounding the site shall be a maximum of 6 feet in height. That the applicant shall work with city engineers on improvements to the abutting right-of-way, and that the applicant shall provide the planning director with shared parking agreement that the condition of the outdoor seating, or the approval of the outdoor seating is conditioned upon the applicant providing an adequate agreement for 60 parking spaces in perpetuity, or as long as that use is active. I don't know if anyone can wordsmith that better.
Could you recommend language?
Perhaps that as a condition of approval, that the applicant is able to show that they have 60 parking spaces available by agreement or otherwise.
Did we want that within a certain perimeter or area?
I mean, I think it's 300 feet right now is what's allowed by the ordinance that we can count, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think that was it.
Second.
No? I read all of those.
All right. Do we have support? Did you support
Yep.
Commissioner Shannon? Okay. Any discussion? All those, go ahead.
Do we need to make any comments in it regarding the music?
The outdoor entertainment, I think, covers everything.
Okay, good, all right.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is, we'll have presentations for 3445 28th Street Southeast, all combined.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's great to be in front of you this afternoon. In front of you is a request for an SPR, site plan review, for the former Toys R Us site located at 3445 28th Street. The building has been vacant since roughly 2018. It's currently zoned MONC, commercial. You guys have seen this site plan before. It's the shops of Centerpoint. It was demalled a few years ago, roughly 10 years ago. The property in question, or the area that we're discussing this afternoon, is at the southeast corner of the site. The overall site is roughly 65 acres in size. Currently, there's easements, access, cross-access easements along the perimeter of this area, as well as through the Toys R Us site, which shows right now 3 outlots that are going to be considered. And then there's a north easement off from East Beltline, and that goes down in front of Krispy Kreme, as well as a portion of Chick-fil-A. This is just a blown up section of that. Again, allowing for access to Chick-fil-A to the west there. What's being proposed this afternoon with regard to the SPR is creation of 2 more easements running north-south along the proposed restaurant here in the middle, as well as on the eastern side of Krispy Kreme Donut, as well as the east side of Chick-fil-A, and then in between the proposed Lot 2 and Outlot 3. So overall, this is going to give more continuity, vehicular continuity, as well as pedestrian and cyclist being able to cross these parcels, as well as allow for customers to park in adjacent lots. Currently, right now, customers of Chick-fil-A queue up on the Toys R Us property. At times, there are up to 40 vehicles, 44 vehicles that are queuing through the drive-through. This would help alleviate that with this landscape island placed here, directing people either north or south, getting to and from either Chick-fil-A or north to either the Chase Bank or the BJ's restaurant. Currently, these easements are not in place. This one is here along Toys R Us. It's also need to be mentioned here that MDOT, the state of Michigan, owns this portion of land, and it's leased to Centerpoint for access. I can't remember the terms of that agreement, but we can ask the petitioner those details. So that allows for the use of that right-of-way for the surrounding property owners there, as well as for the general public to traverse the site. So what we're asking for this afternoon is the approval of the SPR. Oh, a couple of other things I'd like to discuss as well is we'd like to see directional signage within these areas, directing people through the new established developmental area, so that it gives people directions to traverse the site, as well as consistent lighting throughout the redeveloped area of the 3 new parcels. I think that concludes that portion of my presentation. And this is just this gives you an understanding of the existing site with the Toys R Us retail space, as well as what's being proposed, dividing the parcel into three new outlots. Again, BJ's on parcel A, a Chase Bank on parcel B, and then parcel C is subject for further review should they decide to come back with a drive-through. For the bank itself, it's a 3,300 square foot new building. The request this afternoon is for a special land use for the drive-through, which is a single lane ATM with a lane allowing for traffic to traverse around anyone who's at the ATM. There are proposed 30 parking spaces for this site. The zoning code requires 10. So something that you may want to consider is the additional parking spaces that are being requested this afternoon, as it exceeds the required parking spaces. But overall, in general, there's those cross-access easements for this overall area for the receptacle agreement. So it may be consistent with the built environment as it currently is. There's a landscape plan. There'll probably be a little bit of an increase in landscaping. Right now, it's currently just a large parking lot for Toys R Us as well as the shopping center just in general. So it's always great to see that. Here's the internal plans of the building itself. The building will consist of stucco, some metal integrated panels, and there is a height. They're requesting some additional height on the parapet to hide some of the air conditioning units and HVAC systems. Here's the building elevations for the proposed building itself. You'll notice on the east side of the building too that there's only the one window. There's a requirement for 15% of transparency on that east side of the building. Depending upon how the building is laid out and in the inside, they may be asking for a reduction in that transparency. It might be a good idea to ask for some additional landscaping or something there to break that building wall up, because it will be visible from the drive lane coming off from 28th Street. And then finally, Chick-fil-A restaurant is seeking additional drive lane for their existing restaurant. As you can see here, the queuing currently for the drive-through overflows onto the Toys R Us site through that reciprocal agreement. What they're proposing to do is to add additional drive lane. My apologies. Throughout the entire drive-through, which will help with the efficiency of the restaurant and the drive-through just in general. The proposed drive-through will also include a large canopy with fans, as well as heating for staffing during hot summers and cold winters. And this addition of the drive-through is proposed or shown in their traffic analysis will assist in reductions, hopefully, of that queuing. But still, a portion of the drive lane will be placed within the right-of-way of MDOT. Some additional landscaping on the eastern side of the drive lane. They're proposing a new dumpster enclosure along the drive lane as well. And you can see here is where that easement would be for cross-access between BJ's Restaurant and Chick-fil-A. Here's the site plan showing those proposed improvements. There's also, as part of the addition of the drive lane, is 156 square feet of additional building space for the additional window for Chick-fil-A. Building elevation showing the canopy itself, existing structure, and then again those three proposed outlots. And Sarah is going to discuss the BJ's Restaurant.
Thanks, Tyler. So, last but not least, we have the request from BJ's Restaurant to operate a restaurant with outdoor seating with alcohol service, as well as an amendment to the Centerpoint Plan Sign Program. Relative to site and building review, lighting, green space elements, and building requirements, those will be reviewed at permitting on a staff level. I did want to add that the applicant has indicated a dumpster enclosure to be proposed on the north side of the building, as well as 3 proposed bicycle racks to go north of the building as well. Tyler already spoke about access to the site, so that'll come up through both 28th Street as well as from the East Belt Line to the north. The floor plan shows that the restaurant will accommodate about 297 guests indoors, including the bar seating area, and around 40 patrons outside on the patio. Originally, planning staff would have been able to administratively approve the outdoor seating. However, due to the hours of operation, we have brought it forward to you today. In addition to the alcohol service, they have also indicated that they intend to sell BJ's branded beer to go in several different forms. This slide just shows the various locations of the security cameras. We ran this by city staff to make sure it conforms to the CPTED standards, and we saw no issues there. Now shifting gears to signage, a total of 8 wall signs have been proposed, and part of the issue here is that the proposed signage is not consistent with the MONC zone district nor the Centerpoint Shopping Center Plan Sign Program. So we'll start with the north elevation here. This is the side that faces that access way from the East Belt Line. This gives a good representation of what the dumpster enclosure would look like from the street view, as well as the signage here. On the northern elevation, the square footage that's proposed for signage is appropriate and in line with both the Plan Sign Program and the zone district. However, once we get to the east elevation, you'll notice that it also meets the sign requirements of the zone district. However, with the addition of this laser cut silhouette panel, it far exceeded the requirements of both the zone and the Plan Sign Program. This was determined by city staff and the Arts Advisory Council that this would be considered signage due to its commercial speech relating to the ingredients of brewing beer. And so as such, this is what brought them over their allowance. Additionally, on the west side, we see sort of the same situation where majority of the signage on this elevation is appropriate. However, with the addition of another silhouette panel, it brought them roughly 300 square feet over the Centerpoint Plan Sign Program. I did also want to mention the neighboring buildings such as Chick-fil-A and Chase Bank and Krispy Kreme. Those all seem to meet the signage standards of the zone district and the Plan Sign Program. In terms of size, I should say. This is showing the south elevation, so here you can see what the outdoor patio looks like and where it will be oriented. The planning staff would like to add that perhaps you consider requiring more landscaping here, just to screen and help buffer from the traffic and noise of that busy intersection, as well as to mitigate some of the urban heat island effects we might have from the parking lot. This is showing a daytime view just to give you an idea of what the signage would look like and what the restaurant itself would look like from the outside, as well as a nighttime view to show what BJ's Restaurant Group is known for, having this design and this aesthetic at all 200 plus of their locations. So in sum, we ask you to consider whether the 8 proposed wall signs are appropriate and necessary, whether the proposed use is appropriate and complementary to the Center Point Shopping Center, and then as well as the impact of the proposed outdoor seating and alcohol service on adjacent commercial uses.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Sarah or Tyler at this time?
Am I to understand, I really appreciate the fact that all 4 of them, all of these are brought together. It just makes a lot more sense to look at the total and then the individual. So am I to assume that the different property owners obviously have been, or it seems to me, obviously, worked together on this plan and are in concurrence on it? Okay.
Yes.
I think it's with, I appreciate also the, with so many different property owners and easements and things like that, it was quite a challenge to get 4 different plans together.
Yeah, we had, I've been meeting weekly, and staff has been meeting weekly with the folks at Pine Tree to continue to move these projects forward. So we're very appreciative of their assistance through this with all the tenants that are being proposed for these sites.
I just have a question about must we amend the planned sign program for Centerpoint if we were to allow those laser cuts? Or can we just simply allow them through resolution with this application? Does that make sense? Can we just approve their application with the waiver of the size of the signs because of those cuts, or do we have to actually go in and amend the broader planned sign program for Centerpoint? Ooh, I asked a stumper of a question.
Yeah. Elizabeth, would you mind assisting me in how to answer
Sorry.
that? That's okay.
I am the troublemaker today, as usual.
No, so I guess the answer is sort of both. You are amending, this is an amendment to the Centerpoint Plan Sign Program, but it's not affecting anybody else. It's specific to this building.
Okay. So in the resolution, were we to approve these die cuts, we're amending it, but it doesn't open it up to the rest of the Centerpoint users to do whatever
It's specific to this
extensions we
building.
have. Okay, cool. Thanks, Elizabeth. Sorry.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
All right, if there's no other questions for staff, I'll invite an applicant or applicants up if they want to share any other information with us about these proposals.
They're just meeting each other. Only if you want to, so.
It was quite a feat, I would say that. So, my name is Lee Pearson. I'm with Pine Tree. I represent the shopping center ownership as manager. Actually, as new manager as of last fall. We took on the management for the current ownership and have been working diligently with city planning, Tyler, Elizabeth, the rest of the crew, to really bring all this together. Certainly appreciate all the efforts of all of the different tenants, and we're not done yet. So it's been weekly calls with Tyler and talking about how we herd all these cats together. So I'm excited about the shop, about the overall development or the redevelopment. I'm also excited about what Chick-fil-A is proposing to do, because I think it's going to help enhance the whole corner, take care of and address a lot of the traffic issues that currently exist in a much more orderly and fashionable manner. Also excited about getting rid of a dark box and bringing in BJ's Brewhouse. It's really an excellent restaurant. And if you've ever been in one, you would know that, and hopefully you'll all get an opportunity to experience it soon. As well as bringing in Chase and Bank and having an opportunity for another parcel there. So we've got a number of people here. I don't have anything specific that I wanted to share with you, but hopefully all of us can answer any questions you might have. So that's all I would want to say at this point in time.
Right.
And would open it up for anybody else if you want to speak. Otherwise, we're all here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, commissioners, questions for the applicants?
Yeah, I have one for the Chase folks. One of the east side of the building, there's discussion of it not meeting transparency requirements. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on whether more transparency can be added, and or if you're willing to work with city staff to add additional landscaping to break up that big wall.
Sure. My name is Mickey Walker with Kimley Horn. I'm actually the civil engineer, not the architect. But along that side, if you look at the floor plan, there's a number of offices there. So having a level of opaqueness is important just from a privacy standpoint. Breaking up what that might be from a landscaping, we definitely would be open to working with city staff on that.
Those poor people without windows in their offices.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for any of these applications?
One more thing for that one. There was also in our report discussion of excess parking. Is the intention of that just to be shared with the rest of the development? So, or is there a need for Chase to have more parking than what would normally be allowed?
Sure. With most of the Chase prototypes, they do go above code typically from a parking standpoint. It is just to make sure that there is adequate parking for as many patrons as might needed, as well as all their employees. Code requires, I believe, 11 spaces. There's 8 employees at a given time within the bank, so just making sure that there's enough for everyone.
Okay. But those parking spaces would also be available to the surrounding uses as well, correct?
Very likely. I don't know if a parking agreement is in place, but that doesn't mean that someone can overflow into it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I can speak to that, but yes, through the reciprocal easement agreement that is currently in place and that we're working on amending with all 4 parties, anybody can park in any one of those spots. So,
Dean, there's an ATM just north of Krispy Kreme. Are there any plans to remove that ATM? I think it's a Chase.
Yeah. That currently is a Chase ATM, and my understanding is that once the building goes up, that ATM will be removed.
Thank you. And then for commissioners, if you do seek to approve these resolutions, just like to make a condition upon submittal to the planning department a record or a copy of the second amendment of the declaration of reciprocal easements, so that the planning department director can review those, as well as that directional signage be integrated into the overall, that southeast campus portion of the development.
Just a quick question, Tyler. So the internal directional sign plan, that would be part of the approval, the primary approval for Pine Tree. It wouldn't need to be a part of the condition for each of the others?
Just for Pine Tree would be fine, yeah.
And then could you say the language again of you need the copy of the something of the something easement?
Yeah, second amendment to the declaration of reciprocal easements, restrictions, and operating agreement. Sorry,
Okay.
it's a mouthful.
That one, is that one already in the Pine Tree one as well?
It's
And
in
does
there,
it-
yeah,
And does
it's
it
in
have to
there.
be in the
Yes.
others?
It's the same
too?
one?
Yeah, it's in
Okay.
there. And,
I actually made it more general,
Okay.
it would be all of them.
thank you, appreciate it. And then integrated lighting, parking lot lighting for the 3, is that in there? Okay, just making sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry.
All right, any other questions at this time? Okay, then I'll open up the public hearing on these cases. If you're here for any of these applications, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. I don't see anyone jumping up, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other questions or discussion on this?
Did we talk to the BJ's people about adding more landscaping in front of the outdoor seating area? And if not, could the BJ's person come up and tell us if you're cool with that?
Hi, I'm Joan Legay with BJ's Restaurants. And yeah, we're happy to work with staff and add some additional landscaping there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any discussion?
I just want to add on to, I think, where Stacy was going on the artwork. Although it's not considered artwork, it's considered signage, but in my lame art background mind, I think it really adds and enhances to the frontage of the building and the development. So I would be in favor of amending the signage to accommodate that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. I want to be respectful of you guys talked about an art advisory council, and their recommendation that it be considered signage versus maybe just decorative, but I'm comfortable with the waiver in light of their recommendation that it be considered that way, just given the nature of the sign itself.
Okay. Stacy, I saw you taking a lot of notes. You did this to Laura last time.
I know,
so-
right? She should be throwing me
It's
under
your
the bus,
turn.
but I'm happy to make a proposal. So I am going to call for a vote after each individual one. Is that correct? All right. Now therefore be it resolved, the Planning Commission approves the request of Pine Tree Lee Pearson for site plan review for changes to the southwest portion of the shops at Center Point near the intersection of 28th Street and the East Beltline Avenue Southeast to facilitate coordination of new development, parking, and traffic circulation at 3445 28th Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed development will meet the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance because the proposal will reinforce and support the desired character for this area with the proposed site design and vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian circulation. The site is designed to comply with all provisions of the zoning ordinance because safe, convenient, and well-defined vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian circulation within and from the site will be provided, and the existing and proposed cross-access easements will support improved vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian access throughout the site. The proposed site will be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted by this chapter because new internal drive aisles will be constructed to provide defined vehicular circulation routes throughout the development. Redevelopment of existing sites will be brought into conformance with all site improvement provisions of this chapter relative to and proportionate to the extent of redevelopment because the site will be developed in conformity with the site provisions of the zoning ordinance relative to and proportionate to the extent of redevelopment. The buildings are provided with adequate means of ingress and egress by public streets and walkways because private cross-access easements over adjacent properties exist and new easements will be provided. The site circulation plan will be designed to provide defined vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian connectors to public right-of-way. All elements of the site design are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to topography, the size and type of lot, character of the neighborhood and adjoining property, and the type, size, and proportions of the building because the proposed parcels will be redeveloped in a manner consistent with other developments in the MON commercial classification. Access points are located to minimize conflict with traffic operations on abutting streets, and the number of access points is the minimum needed to provide reasonable access to the site because the cross-access easements over the abutting properties will provide for legal access to both 28th Street Southeast and East Beltline Avenue Southeast. Pedestrian bicycle access is available at the 28th Street sidewalk pathway. Safe, convenient, and well-defined vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian circulation within and to and from the site will be provided because the site access points and internal site improvements will provide for defined traffic, circulation, pedestrian connectors, and bicycle amenities, promoting safe and efficient movement within and to the sites. The scale and design of the proposed development will not place an excessive burden on services currently furnished by the city because the site currently served by public water, sewer, and police and fire protection, and site improvements include additional sewer and water improvements to the site. Be it further resolved that the conditions set forth in standard condition set A, striking number 5 and number 7, and that have been previously read and are now on the screen. 2, that all reciprocal easements, restrictions, and operation agreements be approved by the planning director and recorded prior to the closure of the LUDS permit. 3, that an internal directional sign plan be approved by the planning director for this section of the shops at Centerpoint prior to the issuance of the LUDS permit. That any future development sites are subject to zoning ordinance regulations. 5, that any subsequently created lots shall have frontage on cross-access easements. 6, that freestanding pole lighting be consistent in height design and meet the zoning ordinance regulations. And 7, that this approval shall take effect immediately.
Support.
All right, we have motion and support. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Commissioner Joseph.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank N.A. Ken Collender to construct and operate drive-through ATM at 3445 28th Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the MONC zone district to encourage a broad range of business, service, and commercial uses in appropriate locations. Development on an underutilized property will enhance the vitality and encourage additional investment in the area. 2, the proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because as a new development, the site has been designed to meet all standards and requirements with modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance. And the proposed development will not impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property. 3A, the proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the use will support the desired mixed-use character of the neighborhood and adjacent properties. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the intensity of the use and the site orientation are appropriate to its surroundings and adequate vehicular stacking will be provided. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, odors, or noise because the use is anticipated to be used by many patrons already within the shopping center, which is an auto-oriented use. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the proposed improvements do not exacerbate the existing conditions on the site, which again are already auto-oriented in nature. 5A, adequate public or private infrastructure and services do already exist or will be provided at no additional cost. 5B, the proposed use would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the proposed improvements will encourage additional investment in the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, approvals previously read and currently on screen.
Would you be amenable to adding a condition that the applicant work with staff to provide taller plantings to mitigate the limited transparency along the east elevation?
Yes.
Thank you. Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of BJ's Restaurants Incorporated, CO GDP LLC, Jared Taylor, to operate a restaurant with alcohol sales and outdoor seating, as well as an amendment to a planned sign program for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the local economy by encouraging investment, diversifying the economic base, expanding employment opportunities, and provide a mix of uses in the commercial area. It also will conform to the SEPTED ordinance standards through means of building and site design, security measures, and responsible alcohol service. 2, the proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the proposed outdoor seating area will be designed to meet all standards and requirements as outlined in the zoning ordinance. 3A, potentially adverse or detrimental effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because given the relatively small size of the outdoor seating, the surrounding commercial uses and the proximity to major roadways, associated impacts are anticipated to be minimal, and reasonable and appropriate hours of operation have been determined. E1, given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, the proposed location for alcohol sales will be an asset to the neighborhood because the use will contribute to the vitality of the Center Point development, and the use will be unique as compared to other adjacent establishments. E2, the use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the proposed hours of operation are consistent with the operations of other establishments in the vicinity. E5, the use as to be operated as proposed will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the primary use is as a restaurant serving food for consumption on the premises during all hours of operation. The sale of to-go beverages is accessory to the main restaurant use and is intended as an amenity for restaurant patrons. The applicant has demonstrated that the proposed planned sign program would result in a more attractive aesthetic setting, improved safety, provide more convenient identification for planned users, or other similar purposes that would not be achievable without deviations from the specific sign requirements of the zone district because the applicant has provided that the proposed sign package is necessary to provide a greater means of wayfinding within the Center Point development, and the proposed silhouette signage will provide unique aesthetic improvements to the Center Point development. The applicant has demonstrated that the proposed plan substantially furthers the purposes and intent of sections 5.15.1 because the proposed sign will be consistent with other signage already allowed throughout the development as outlined in the original planned sign program. The applicant has demonstrated that approval of the planned sign program would not create any adverse impacts on one or more properties in the vicinity because the proposed amendment reinforces and supports the character of the surrounding commercial district by taking into account building scale and massing and nearby travel speeds. It balances the right to communicate with needs to promote orderly communication, promote community aesthetics, and prevent a proliferation of signs and sign structures that can be confusing and distracting. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A that have been previously read and are on the screen now. 2, that no additional signage may be permitted for this site unless the planned sign program is further amended by the Planning Commission. 3, that the full service indoor and outdoor hours of operation are 11 a.m. to midnight Monday through Friday and 10 a.m. to midnight Saturday and Sunday. 4, volume reductions of amplified music and general noise on the outdoor patio will be reduced by BJ's Brewhouse staff by 11:30 p.m. daily. 5, per MCL 436.1537A, all off-premise liquor and beer sales must be stored in BJ's Brewhouse branded sealed containers. And 6, that the applicant will work with city staff to provide additional landscaping in proximity to the outdoor eating area.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Now therefore be it further resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of Chick-fil-A Incorporated Jeff Killingsworth to construct a building addition and a second drive-through lane at the restaurant at 2750 East Beltline Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the MONC zone district to encourage a broad range of business, service, and commercial uses in appropriate locations. The development on an underutilized property will continue to enhance the vitality and encourage additional investment in the area. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards, section 5.12.8.e, because as a new development, the site has been as a addition to a development, the site has been designed to meet all standards and requirements with modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the use will support the desired mixed-use character of the neighborhood and adjacent properties. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the intensity of the use and site orientation are appropriate to its surroundings, and adequate vehicular stacking will be provided. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, smoke, odors, or noise because the addition of a drive-through, the addition of an additional drive-through lane is not anticipated to significantly disturb surrounding tenant property or use. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the proposed improvements do not exacerbate the existing conditions on the site, which are already auto-oriented in nature. The proposed development will retain as many natural features as the landscape is practicable because additional landscaping and green space included in an island in the drive-through area will be added. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services do already exist or will be provided at no additional cost by the applicant. The proposed use would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the proposed improvements are necessary to ensure little or no additional cost or traffic control be mitigated through city services. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, which has been previously read and is on the screen now. And 2, that all reciprocal easements, restrictions, and operation agreements be approved by the planning director and recorded prior to the closure of the LEDS permit.
Support.
All right, we have motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. I'll open up the public comment portion of our meeting today. If anyone would like to come and say anything, now's your chance. All right, I'll close public comment. Commissioners or staff, anything else? Okay, we're adjourned.